On August 10th, 2026, the trial for Tupac's murder is finally set to begin after a couple of years of delays at the request of the defendant, Duane Keffe D. Davis, who has switched attorneys several times since his arrest in September of 2023. He has been sitting in jail awaiting trial ever since. A decade ago, I released the documentary Murder Rap that first aired Keffe's taped confession to his alleged involvement in Tupac's murder, which he told to an LAPD task force back in 2008.
I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, dude, pop it to him.
And then I was there when he gave his first public interview about the case for the 2018 docuseries Death Row Chronicles on BET. And I've worked with law enforcement on the case since that interview aired. So I'm in a unique position to lay out the case against Keffe based on what is now public information. And this is what Keffe D is up against. So briefly, for those of you who don't know the story, on September 7th, 1996, Tupac and his label's CEO, the infamous Suge Knight, attended a Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas. And as they were leaving the fight and walking through the MGM Grand Hotel, Tupac, Suge, and several close gang associates from Suge's hometown of Compton, California, spotted a Crip gang rival named Orlando Anderson and beat him up, with Tupac leading the charge. And then later that night, Tupac was fatally shot in a gang-style drive-by shooting. And of course, that was not a coincidence. Anderson had a reputation as a shooter and in fact would die about a year and a half later in a gang shootout that he started, in which he also killed 2 other gang members. So Orlando Anderson was the prime suspect from the start. Informants told police back home in Compton that Orlando Anderson and his co-conspirators were bragging about the murder.
Dre and Orlando, they came back bragging about what happened out there. He seen Tupac and Big Suge, I think, in a BMW, and he said he let off on him.
What does let off on him mean?
Shooting a person. Like it was a big old joke or something. Like it was a big joke. You can tell when a person nervous. They was nervous when they got back, talking, you can tell they had nervousness,
Who besides yourself down there knows, for one, knows about these guys killing Tupac?
Shit, pretty sure everybody around there knows about it.
And the Piru Blood gang members on Tupac's side have since reported hearing the same thing, that the Southside Crips were bragging about killing Tupac.
Right at that point, after the shooting, they came to the club, Southside just dumped on us, and that's all was said. Everybody know it's Southside. We just had an altercation here. A little thug just got beat up in the MGM. Ain't nobody else there for it. Everybody know who did it. Everybody know what the reason was for. He just went for the direct target. He went straight after who hit him. Retaliation is a motherfucker. His name just started coming out because he was taking credit for it. He started telling people he did that.
But back then, Las Vegas police weren't able to build a strong enough case to make an arrest. And then Orlando Anderson himself was killed in 1998, and it went cold and became what I consider the most famous unsolved murder in history. But for decades, it seems that the Crips killing Tupac was the worst kept secret in Compton. Then, in 2008, Orlando Anderson's uncle, Keffe D., who was also the alleged shot caller for their crew of Southside Compton Crips, confessed to an LAPD task force that was investigating the murder of Tupac's rival, Biggie Smalls, which had occurred in LA just 6 months after Tupac's murder. And in this statement, Keffe confirmed that his nephew, Orlando Anderson, fired the shots that killed Tupac. And Keffe claimed that he was in the car with Anderson when it happened and that he handed him the murder weapon in the moments before Anderson fired the shots.
We like, there they go. Made a U-turn. We wasn't supposed to make a U-turn. Just wanted a U-turn. It was in the middle lane. We just pulled up on the side, checked every car to see where they was.
So you were fitting to blast if you had to, or you were just...
Yeah, if we would have been on our side, I would have blasted.
Okay.
I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, give it, pop to it.
So Orlando shot across Dre?
He leaned over on the window, we rolled down the window, popped.
But Keffe's confession to the LAPD was what's known as a profer session, and the terms of a profer deal are often misunderstood. In a profer session, you can confess to a crime, and that confession cannot be used against you. That's it. It is not immunity, and people commonly confuse it with like a blanket immunity deal. It does not mean that you can never be charged with the crime that you're confessing to. It just means that your words in that profer session cannot be used to prosecute you. However, there are two big rules with a profer. The biggest one is you cannot lie. The whole spirit of a profer deal is for law enforcement to get the truth of what happened, and in return, they won't use that statement against the person who is confessing it. But it can provide information to help them close the case in other ways, to go after other potential co-conspirators, to go up the line if anyone ordered the crime, and that kind of thing. And the other rule with a profer is that you are only protected from what you say in that profer session, on that day. It is commonly referred to as a queen for a day deal. It's that day only with law enforcement. So if you go on CNN afterwards and you tell the same story again, they can use that CNN interview against you. And that is exactly where Keffe D screwed up. My documentary Murder Rap came out a decade ago. And then in 2017, I found out that Keffe was going public, starting with an interview on BET's Death Row Chronicles about the history of Death Row Records. And I was a consultant on that show, and I was present when his 2 in-studio interviews for that series were filmed. And in that interview, he confirmed a lot of details from his profer session 9 years earlier. And in some moments that didn't make it into the show, Keffe expressed concerns that what he was saying could get him locked up or even get him the death penalty. And that's interesting because today, I think he's trying to claim that he thought he had immunity. But it seems to me that people with immunity typically aren't afraid of getting the death penalty. And during this interview, Keffe also referenced a book that he was working on about his life. Death Row Chronicles aired in February 2018, and within months, police in Las Vegas had reactivated the Tupac murder investigation. Then, the following year, in April of 2019, Keffe's book, Compton Street Legend, was published. And in my opinion, it reads like a 232-page confession. In the book, he confirms many details that he first shared back in his 2008 profer, that after Keffe's nephew Orlando Anderson was jumped by Tupac and his crew at the MGM, a Harlem hustler named Zip Martin had supplied Keffe with the murder weapon in the parking lot of the MGM Grand, and that Keffe and his Crip crew then went to Suge Knight's Las Vegas club looking for Tupac's group, how they gave up looking, and Keffe switched vehicles and got into a white Cadillac with his nephew Orlando Anderson and 2 other Crips, and then how they spotted Tupac and Suge's entourage on their way to the club, and that, quote, one of my guys from the back seat grabbed the Glock and started busting back. In his profer, of course, he said that guy was Orlando Anderson. In his book, he refused to name his nephew again. 2 months after Keffe's book was published, he did his first of a number of YouTube interviews, starting with Vlad TV, an interview channel with millions of subscribers. And he again confirmed many of the details of Tupac's murder. And crucially, he held his book up for the camera and proclaimed, "This is my book here. I would like you guys to buy it and get the real truth instead of from a cop or some fucking industry people, some bullshit. you getting it from the real motherfucker. So go get the book, and you can get the real truth about this whole situation. And this moment is critical because Keffe's attorney has attempted to get this book suppressed so that it won't be used at the trial, and he claims that they can't prove how much of the book Keffe actually wrote versus how much was written by the author that he worked with. But here on YouTube, we have Keffe holding up the book and proclaiming it the real truth. And the judge recognized this and has denied Keffe's motion to have the book excluded from the trial. So with his interview on Vlad TV back in 2019, at that point, Keffe had publicly confirmed his alleged involvement in Tupac's murder 3 times. On BET, in his book, and now on YouTube. But he was far from done. Over the next few months, Keffe did interviews with 2 more YouTube channels, retelling his first-hand account of Tupac's murder again and again. And then Keffe went silent for a couple of years until September of 2021. With the 25th anniversary of Tupac's murder approaching, Keffe broke his silence again with the first of what would become 5 interviews for a YouTube channel called The Art of Dialogue that would play out over the next couple of years. In this first interview with that channel, Keffe finally confirmed publicly for the first time a detail that previously had only been told in his 2008 profer session. He confirms that his nephew, Orlando Anderson, shot Tupac. The interviewer tells Keffe everybody know Orlando Anderson was the shooter, so Dre got cold feet, he didn't want to do it, he gave the gun to Orlando shot Tupac and Suge. And in response to that, Keffe nods and says, yeah, he did his thing, yeah. But even though he knows that the attention is on him, and at the very least that there are rumors that police have reactivated the case, in April of 2022, Keffe does his 4th interview with The Art of Dialogue, and this time he is visibly flustered. And he calls out Diddy. Now, in Keffe's profer session back in 2008, he claimed that Tupac was killed by his nephew Orlando Anderson as revenge for Tupac jumping Anderson earlier that night. But he also claimed that prior to that night, Diddy had already offered him $1 million to kill Suge Knight and Tupac. So in this 4th Art of Dialogue interview, Keffe addresses Diddy directly, basically begging him to help him out or give him something, saying he was on top of the world until he met Diddy and that this shit is wrong. He says, come on homie, I need something, throw a dog a bone or something, etc., etc. At the end of this interview, Keffe is asked about the rumor that he's going to be arrested for Tupac's murder. And Keffe says, I'm a man, I'm gonna stand tall through it all, dog. If they do come arrest me, what the fuck I gonna do? The Lord got me, God got me. That's why I'm still here and everything, dude. In April of 2023, Keffe returned to Vlad TV for a second interview with that channel. And at this point, it's been nearly 4 years since his first interview with them. And he rehashes a lot of the previous details about his life and Tupac's case, and he's asked again if he's afraid of being arrested. And he says that whatever happens, he'll handle it, and that he's a God-fearing man, and that, quote, I ain't gonna go up there and cut my wrists, hang myself, or nothing like that. They want to come put me in jail for life, that's just something I gotta do, dude. Not like I'm scared of jail or nothing. Well, a few months later, in July of 2023, Keffe appeared on The Art of Dialogue for his 5th and final interview with them. And as clips from that began dropping daily, on July 18th, Keffe's house, which coincidentally by then was in the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, is raided by the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. And in an Art of Dialogue clip released 2 days after that raid, he's asked to clarify whether it was Orlando Anderson or his friend DeAndre Smith who pulled the trigger on Tupac, and Keffe makes a cut gesture with his hands and says, we already discussed that, what, you trying to get me in jail again? And once again, that doesn't sound to me like somebody who thinks they have immunity.
Hey Keith, Metro Police. Come over here.
From there, a grand jury was convened. Keffe was ultimately indicted and arrested, and he's been behind bars awaiting trial ever since, for nearly 3 years now. So, the case against Keffe. It's unknown yet if his 2008 profer session or a separate 2009 interview he did with Vegas police will be admitted as evidence. His attorney is fighting it. Keffe then has multiple public confessions to the crime that he has to explain. He has a former close friend of his who placed him in Las Vegas the night of the murder. He has motive in the form of revenge for the jumping of his nephew. And in my view, motive plus opportunity plus confession equals conviction. And this isn't even everything that prosecutors are going to bring to the trial. This is just what we know about publicly. So to anyone who thinks the case against Keffe is weak, let me give you this scenario. If you participated in a murder and informants then went to the police and said that your co-conspirators were bragging about it, and a close friend placed you in the area where the crime took place, and then you started going all over the media, confessing to it publicly multiple times, do you honestly think you wouldn't be charged? It's going to be a jury trial, and with a jury, anything can happen, but I doubt Keffe will be acquitted. I think it's very likely he will spend the rest of his life in prison.